Welcome to Noire Ganja! I'm Catelyn.
I'm Kris. And we're the Bridges.
Oh, look at that, babe.
I know.
That's so lovely.
I know. Sound, it has a ring to it, huh?
Yeah, so you know, that's a little ring-a-ding-ding-ding-dong. Ring-a-ding-ding-ding-dong. You know, it's got a little good stuff to it. So we're back at it again with episode
2.
And so we're going to keep it a little light today. It won't be too heavy, but episode 3, we're coming with that heat. It's already outlined. The content is already created, okay? We're content creators in this cannabis industry.
Say that.
Period.
Yeah, the
and
game
so,
on lock.
All of our followers out there... You know, you gotta speak stuff into existence.
Yeah.
All of our followers out there, the Ganja Gang.
The Ganja Gang. Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, that's good, right?
Nice.
The Ganja Gang.
I like that.
Come hear about us today. What are we gonna do today, babe?
Today's a little bit interview style. Just want the people out there in YouTube podcast land to get to know you a little bit more, understand kind of your academic background, maybe even your journey to cannabis to date.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this gives you a little more, background on why you might be credentialed to talk about this subject.
Why people should listen to me.
Yeah.
Why people should be like,
so.
Damn, that bitch know what the fuck she talking about.
Yeah. Retweet. So yeah, I mean, I guess with that said, we can go ahead and jump into this. I think you need to scoot up a little bit.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Gotta get in the camera.
Gotta get in the frame.
Yeah, this Yeti pick up everything.
So I guess we can start with...
Could you try again?
I'm sorry.
I guess we can start with, where are you from?
Okay. You know, from the O-N-E, the one, Omaha, Nebraska, gang, 402, what's good? Say some streets, babe. Say some streets from Nebraska. We live 2 different lives in Nebraska.
Nebraska, we've established Nebraska. Where in Nebraska?
Oh, we live in, we're from Omaha, Nebraska. And yes, there's black people there.
8,000 to be exact.
How many, babe?
I think it's like 8,700 in the whole state.
Yeah, here we are. So... we're there, and we're all populated in one area.
Densely populated.
But it's cool. We're from Nebraska. You know, it's just an agriculture state.
Yeah.
Little cities. Omaha is the best you're gonna get, and then the rest is just farmlands besides like Lincoln and the surrounding cities.
Whole lot of corn, whole lot of flatness.
And it's cold as hell.
Yeah.
And when it gets cold, it gets cold.
And then when it's hot, it's hot. It's humid too.
So that's where we're from.
So cool.
Both of us. Both of us.
Both of them. But I mean, from there, you graduated from high school. You decided, I'm going to go to college. And where'd you go for undergrad?
So I started out my college journey because I wanted to get the book out of Nebraska. But I ended up going for my first year of school to Spelman, but then it just became too expensive. So I pieced the book out, went back home, back to Nebraska where the Pell Grant could pay for my tuition, and all I needed was a part-time job to pay for living expenses.
I'm paying for your school now.
So we went back. I went back home to Nebraska. It was easier, you know. It wasn't easier in terms of academics, but it was easier in terms of just being closer to family.
Sure. And the fiscal component.
Yeah. So.
And what'd you study?
And so I studied biological systems engineering. It sounds super duper smart, but it's just I focused on biomedical studies, and what that looked like was doing a lot of stem cell laboratory work, tissue engineering, And it's pretty much you want to cultivate cells to make them populate and get really big, and then you can use that for other applications, for treatments and building ears and shit like that.
Oh.
Yeah, it gets really crazy, and so
a lot of people out here need ears. Sounds like.
Yeah, remember that Netflix show we watching right now? That girl was
yeah.
born without no ear.
She was out here singing.
Yeah. So there's people who
Lord.
really do need ears built for them, but that just wasn't my lane. I don't want to be in the pharmaceutical, medical devices, medical industry. I thought I did.
Unethical.
But yeah, because you know, if y'all don't know, y'all better look at the Tuskegee experiment, Henrietta Lacks. There's just some crazy ass shit that happens in the medical field to black people. And we already just don't trust it, you know?
Reaping not a single benefit to this day.
So that's why I was an undergrad. Yeah.
So
I have a lot of research. That's why I fell in love with research, where I wanted to go to graduate school and pursue more research and just be really, really immersed in just doing research. I love it.
Cool. Well, I guess before I jump into some more questions about your academic credentials, let's switch up the groove a little bit and tell me a little bit about where all you have lived.
Oh. Well, we lived in Nebraska. And then we moved to Texas. So I moved to Texas after my husband. He left me back in Nebraska. And then he was my then boyfriend. And I said, so nigga, you gonna be with me or you not gonna be with me? And he said, I want to be with you. So then we ended up moving to Texas. And through him, I met a mutual person who knew my graduate advisor at Texas A&M. And she was the first black woman of the biological and agricultural department at Texas A&M.
Cool. Sounds nerdy as hell.
Yeah, so she was super, like, she's my road dog. She really encouraged me throughout getting my master's at Texas A&M. And now we live in California. Gang, because we on that cannabis shit, you know what I'm saying? We need to grow these plants up in the crib. We need to sell this dope legally, you know.
Rolling down the street, open window, sipping on gin and juice.
Hey,
laid back.
Got my mind on my money and my money on my mind. Hey, it's lit.
Okay.
So now we live in California, which is fucking expensive here, but the weather's nice. That's good, but it's really expensive.
Damn decent.
And you can grow 6 plants here in the crib, so it's nice.
For the free.
So we like that. And that's where we're at now, where we lived. And it's really interesting to think about that because they're all in different spaces of cannabis legalization, like in terms of Nebraska not being legal at the fuck. They even like rigging shit so things are not on the ballot because it should have been on medical marijuana, should have been on the ballot this year in 2020, but that shit didn't happen because niggas is fake.
Well, what can you do?
And then Texas is in a mid-stage of where they want recreational legalization, but they have some medicinal use. But since Texas is pretty conservative, there's a lot of Republicans stopping those actions from legalizing. And then you're here in California, where this shit is just medical marijuana been legalized since 1996 in California. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time. So it's just interesting to see like all these different phases of where we've lived in terms of what cannabis looks like in terms of legalization there.
Sure.
But that was just a side note. So yeah,
no,
that's
not
it.
mad at it. Learning me up.
That's the type of shit you get on this bitch, okay? I'm learning, y'all learning.
Well, you already kind of went into it a little bit. Went into a grad program. Met your graduate advisor. It was in Texas.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that program. Where was that? How did it go? And I guess how has that had an impact on you now in your workplace?
So I feel like when I first started the Texas A&M program, I did not want to do agriculture. I'm like, shit, I know I don't want to do medicinal stuff, but I guess I'll try agriculture because a lot of the things that I could do in like the biomedical world can be transferred into agriculture because they're all living systems and plants are just simpler living systems than us humans. So it's kind of nice. So when I went in, my project was about cotton.
Ironic.
It was just so annoying, but it's fine. My master's thesis focused on cotton. And that gave me a lot of experience to just working with agriculture systems and dealing with white ass farmers and dealing with motherfuckers who's been in the cotton industry for decades and decades and decades because their families own these cotton fields. And slaves. So it's just like I learned so much just by interacting and seeing what the agriculture field looks like. But like many STEM programs or STEM related fields, there's a lack of black folks.
And representation, huh?
Yeah, so that's what it felt like to be in agriculture. Because biomed was like a little bit more hip. It was more like, oh, all these younger crowd people are coming into biomed so we can make some changes. It was a little bit more, it was like a white sorority fraternity type of vibe. And then when you go into agriculture, it's more like, I've been on this land for 150 years.
Yeah,
there's no way you could tell me how to give nutrients to my plants, and I've been doing it for years, and some bullshit like that. So
good old boy industry, huh?
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Rooted in tradition. And
it's different, but what I do know is you can curb the fuck out of people because they're not ready for you. So it's fine. Oh. You can get on people's necks.
Flat back.
So that is what ultimately led us to cannabis, because we're like, I think we just were having a discussion. It was like, what are you going to do in agriculture? You obviously don't know. You don't want to do cotton. And then, I was probably smoking a blunt. Not my husband, because he has a full-time job, but
a regular job.
I was probably smoking a blunt. I'm like, wait, this shit fire. Maybe we could grow this shit. And then it was like, duh, why are you getting this advanced degree? You're not going to do anything to it. And then once I started intertwining Black history into the cannabis industry and understanding what representation looks like in the cannabis industry and the war on drugs and all that other shit, Black history in cannabis, Black history in agriculture. Yeah, that's our dog if y'all hear us. Kyrie is down here going hard on his tail. But yeah, so that's what led us to cannabis. The grad program was just kind of a stepping stone to get my foot in the door and to really understand agriculture and to become and to meet people and to network. But it ultimately led, I think it was divine, God driven, to get to cannabis, and I think that was the reason why we ended up in agriculture. So yeah, that's my experience.
Glad to hear about it. Okay, so you did all that. So what do you do now?
What do I do now?
What is your job title? Let's start with that.
Oh, so my boss wants me to be named the chief scientist. But the HR lady told me that that's too big of a title, so I need to stay in my lane to be a research scientist.
Okay.
So I'm a research scientist.
It's very ambiguous.
On my LinkedIn, I call myself an agricultural engineer.
Okay.
And so I think in my current role, what I do is that I work for an organic garden supply company, and the biggest consumers for these organic garden supplies are cannabis growers. And so there's different stages in cannabis growth, and there's different organic supplies that you can apply to the plant to make it grow to its best potential and have the best yield and have the best cannabinoid profile and terpene, levels and things like that. So
wow, so like engineered freaking weed farming.
Yeah, so it's like you have to be strategic about like what you're placing on your plants, how much you're placing on your plants, what that
when
looks
you're
like.
placing on your
Exactly.
plants.
So in my role, what I do is I maintain the organic certifications for our cannabis products, and so I do all the paperwork, the farm management, and things like that to make sure that the cannabis products that we're producing and cultivating are organic certified. And just a little side note, since organic is deemed a federal term under USDA, so there's small organizations that do organic certifications until the product becomes federally legal and the USDA can certify organic. So there's programs like Enviro-Organic and Clean Green, and the CDFA is coming out, the California Food and Drug of Agriculture or something like CDFA. Okay, let me not show my ass.
It's probably administration.
Yeah, it's like the Department of Food and Agriculture in California. And so That's what I'm a part of, but also I help do product development in terms of developing new organic products and what that looks like in sustainability and giving back to the earth and creating a happy soil food web. Because we want to sequester the carbon and not release the carbon. Sorry. I wanted to drive that home. But that's what I do now. And so I'm just really passionate about learning about cannabis, becoming a cannabis educator, informing people about cannabis, relating it back to Black people, understanding our impact in the cannabis industry. And that's what we are now, because we need Black people. And since I'm doing it, basically my husband's doing it too. So that's why he's on this podcast.
Yeah, she's making me do it.
And sometimes I don't know how to explain things correctly, so he can interpret that and give y'all the real deal spiel.
Maybe I'll give y'all the normal human being
because I'm a little different. So yeah, that's where we are now. And that's why you should trust me. My credibility, because there's a lot of people in the industry now. It's saturated. It's like I just want to be a representation for Black people and to give basic knowledge, current knowledge, continuous knowledge about cannabis, so people can either be business leaders in this industry. You can tell other people to destigmatize what cannabis looks like around your communities and your households, and also to be an advocate in your community, because things that are needed in terms of people being vocal and passing these laws and legislation for medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, you have to have the basics. And that's what we're here to do. Get the basics. So woo.
Oh my gosh.
But that's all I got. You got anything?
Well.
Yeah, that's all.
Moving on in this show. Long term, what do you think you see yourself doing?
Long term. Okay, so I'm not trying to give my secrets away, because your girl still need this job that I got, and we don't know when we're publishing this information. But hopefully my biggest goal is to be someone who's an advocate in cannabis, if that involves me staying in this industry that I'm in now, in organic garden supply, going to graduate school, maybe getting my PhD in researching cannabis and becoming a professor who creates diverse communities with cannabis research, or just running my own shit on this podcast or something, and just giving people cannabis as gems. I just know that I want my career to be involved.
Giving them some nugs.
That is good. Okay, that's a side note. That's one thing we need to note. So, listeners, please give us any topics, ideas that you may want us to talk about, and we will talk about them here on the podcast. That's always nice to get ideas from our audience. But back to... So I just really want to be involved, and since we're young, we're 25, 26, we just want to showcase our transition into the cannabis industry, because there are people who have been in the game a long time, so they kind of already just know things.
Cemented.
Yeah, they're cemented, and it's kind of like the industry is like, dapping, and you know who you know, and so there's barriers and things like that. So it's just like I want to alleviate some of those barriers, and I want everybody to be on the same platform, because there's a lot of information that's out there and misinformation that's out there because there's propaganda. And so I just want to be a voice of truth for cannabis,
especially for Black folks,
for the Blacks, because we Black. So we got to talk about our experience, and we'll always acknowledge the Native Americans that was here before us, the indigenous folks, because they got them fucked up.
Say that.
But we will speak from our experience as Black folks, and your experience as being my husband, as we navigate through this cannabis industry, because
everything ultimately you do impacts me.
Exactly. So, and that's why we are here. So hopefully you all trust me, and it's gonna be just conversation based. It won't be too structured right now. And hopefully we can do like maybe some bi-weekly episodes, or however often we can do things. But that's the goal. But the next episode is already written up. We just got to record that.
Well, is that about to be a segue into letting the people know what's the next episode?
Oh, yes. So the next episode is going to be prepared to just learn some basics about cannabis, like what's the difference between marijuana and hemp, and also some basics about social equity programs. So the goal is not to be super structured, but to be structured enough that we both can have conversations, we both can learn, the audience can learn. Maybe we can do quick little researches while we're here on the podcast to bring more information, but it's just going to be a growing process, because the more we can tell people about it, then the better we come cemented in the cannabis industry.
And I don't know, I think you made a good point earlier in the episode when you kind of addressed not every state at this point is legal, but having that knowledge and at least a very low level understanding of cannabis will be valuable, because I'm a pretty firm believer at some point everywhere cannabis is going to be legal.
It has to be. I mean, it's too... They can't go back.
Yeah. They're not going to undo it.
They're not going to undo everything. So eventually people are going to have to budge, and it's going to have to become federally legal. And then so having this basic knowledge and people in those areas, like for Nebraska, there's going to have to be people there who advocate for a social equity program in Nebraska.
Period.
So having this basic level of understanding, there has to be people on the ground who understand the basics, that they can educate other people and also educate the people that they're trying to pass these laws through, because they have such a distorted view of cannabis or marijuana. I just say cannabis now because it's just like the general coin term, but we all know in the black community is marijuana, weed, trees,
gas.
So don't think I switched up, but I'm just going to probably always say cannabis because that's just the easiest.
Yeah, that's your working environment language.
That's my working woman environment.
Well, cool.
Okay.
Outside of that, that's all I have for you on the question.
I think it's good.
Evening.
That's like 22 minutes. That's a good little thing. People learned about us. They know why we can talk about this conversation. We're in it right now. We're going to talk about our experience.
You didn't do nothing as like a transition out.
Oh, y'all, that is a thing. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, 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 we're out. Ooh, 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 we're out.
Okay. Well, I mean, thanks for spending a little more time and kind of learning me up on what your background was and is, and learning up your viewers.
Yeah, thanks for doing this for me, baby. Hopefully after this, we just come with some straight knowledge. There might be episodes that might just be about Kris and us, because we's married. As a wife now. So it might be little personal episodes, but a lot of it is just going to be cannabis related topics. Kris is going to bring some business, social, economic type of things to the podcast. I'm going to be bringing the research ass shit, science ass shit, benefits ass shit to the podcast. But that's it. So please, once we get a blog, actually I do have a website, www.noireganja.com.
Boom, there it is.
And there you can sign up for the email list, and hopefully there'll be blog posts. But if they're not, eventually there will be blog posts. Also, we're going to get a Twitter account, and we also have an Instagram, Noire Ganja. So follow.
And if you're checking us out on YouTube right now,
and YouTube, babe, yeah.
Make sure you like, share, subscribe.
Gang, gang, gang. And I think that's it. So that's a good closing section. Oh, and also we want to have maybe a segment that relates to our listeners, and what might be fun if you all send any funny stories you have about cannabis, or any stories that you may want us to talk about in terms of your cannabis experiences, good or bad.
There's like some myths you want debunked.
Yeah, that's a good idea, myths. So that's a good idea too. So just send us anything, and that's noireganja@gmail.com.
There it is.
Captured all them names
on the shameless plug.
Yeah, so that's what we are. And so we're gonna close out.
Thanks for listening, and catch us on the next episode.
Period. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Please rate and review on the platform you listen to this episode. Also, go and visit the website www.noireganja.com, where you can find blog posts about our home growing journey, professional cannabis journey, and so much more. Thanks for coming.